The news today, couple things I want to talk about. Get into talking about the murder charge for Luigi Mangione. We'll talk a little about the shooter up in Madison, Wisconsin. Want to talk a little bit about drones. Want to talk about who our president is and perception of that and how that could impact things. We got a few things I want to get to. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Crock. Chris is filling in earlier in the day for Casey, as Casey is out on vacation. I'll be in for Chris the next couple weeks, covering for vacations. And a bunch of ways you can connect with me. I'm across social media at Westside Jeff. That's on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram. And you can just dial the good old telephone, 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. Producer working with me tonight is Garrett Tarango, and partner of his is Matt. So I got two guys that I'm so dangerous. I got to have two guys in the studio for me. And the newsroom, we got Lori Waffenschmidt, who will keep us up to date, top and bottom of the hour. News stories going on. There's a lot going on in the news, and let's start there. Today, in the assassination a week ago of the United Healthcare president or CEO, the suspect, the accused, Luigi Mangione, today was formally accused of first-degree murder. That's a charge that branded him, and this is the key part. What's interesting to me is who's behind it. I'll tell you that in 30 seconds. But this charge brands him as a terrorist and aimed directly at the idea that killing of United Healthcare's chief executive was a legitimate political act. It's going to be interesting because the prosecution has to prove that it was done as an act of a political act. That's going to be interesting to follow that trial. The prosecutor, the district attorney on this, is a name you're familiar with. His name is Alvin Bragg, Manhattan District Attorney. You know him because he's the one that's going after Trump. He ran for office saying he was going to do everything he can to take Trump down. I'm just glad to see Alvin Bragg doing his job and chasing somebody, a real bad guy, a real criminal, other than Donald Trump. Bragg late today, said this was a frightening, well-planned, targeted murder that is intended to cause shock and attention and intimidation. He said that late today at a news conference. Now, prosecutors have said that Mangione's intent was to intimidate or coerce a civilian population and to affect the conduct of a unit of government by murder. In other words, a political act of terrorism. It's going to be interesting to see the case that they build. I'm pleasantly surprised and stunned, and there's a side of me that wants to say, okay, what's really behind this? Alvin Bragg's actually doing his job, which surprises me. Mangione also faces 2 counts of second-degree murder and weapons charges in New York. That's in the killing of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. If convicted on the highest charge, Mangione faces a sentence of life in prison without parole. That's too good for a guy like that. That's too good. That's my attitude. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Crock. A second story I saw today is we know the story about the shooting in Madison, Wisconsin yesterday. The 15-year-old suspect, the shooter, was a 15-year-old girl, and her name is Natalie Rupnow. All across the news, they say that she goes by Samantha, which is interesting because I think there's overtones there that I don't necessarily want to go there without having more information on it. But, we've got 2 dead and her dead. I always say to you this, that when you see stories that are horrific, like those 2 stories, when you see stories that are really bad, the shooter in Wisconsin at a school, a Christian school, and the shooter of the United Healthcare CEO in New York, Monday morning quarterback, The law enforcement agencies right now are doing all their investigations. They're scanning social media. They are gone through their homes, all their friends, everything they can do to try to build out a story, to identify what the motivation was, what the timeline was, and make sure they have a case they can prosecute. When history is written on these two incidents, just like Newtown, just like the Aurora shootings, just like Columbine, just like Uvalde, you pick the tragedy, you're going to find a common thread. And the common thread is always that you look back and it was somebody who was disconnected from a community. And when I say community, I'm talking family, friendships, relationships. They were withdrawn. You will find a person. It's not uncommon to find someone who's bullied. It's not uncommon to find somebody who was in a very deep, dark spot. But in the end, you're going to find that there will be people in the lives of those perpetrators, the shooter in Wisconsin, as well as the shooter in New York, who after the fact will say, yeah, now that I look back, this didn't look right. This didn't sound right. This was odd. This was out of character. And they'll be able to identify 3, 4, 5, 6 things that were warning signs to them. And I'm talking about parents, friends, cohorts, peers, mentors, people in their life. Many of them will say, yeah, I just thought that person was going through a tough time. And these are scenarios in which the perpetrator could have potentially been stopped, if not stopped. The people who knew something about it could have potentially done something to avoid the situation or minimize the damage in the situation. And to me, it's not necessarily just about the loss of life of the life of the person that they killed as much as it is of saving their life. I always said as a kid, when my kids were growing up, they're going to do stupid things. Your kids do stupid things. And we all have. I just hope the stupid things are things that aren't felonies that turn into prosecutorial type scenarios that damage them for life. It's okay. We all learn life lessons, right? It's okay. We all do stupid things. You just hope the stupid things that someone does is not life altering. In the scenario in Madison, Wisconsin, and the scenario in United Healthcare shooting of the CEO, both of those are life altering. It's interesting to me to follow the story in New York because the attorney that was hired on after the fact is a high-profile attorney that was on multiple news networks last week talking about it. And she said that the only opportunity there in their best case is not guilty by reason of insanity. So it's going to be interesting to follow that. Crime in courts and cases are things that people, we love, we crave. I know people who watch court TV because they love it. Murder mystery stories. These are two of them. You don't have a lot of empathy for a school shooter, but the guy in New York is one that is interesting to watch for a bunch of reasons because of the empathy factor, which is derailed, which is bad, which is wrong, which is off center. But these are stories that will dominate the news cycle over the course of the next several months. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You want to weigh in on some of these things, 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. Got to hit a 3-minute break on the other 3.5-minute break on the other side of it. An update on the latest on what's going on with drones. Woke up this morning. I turned on the news as I always do. This morning it happened to be NBC, and I was stunned at what I heard out of an interview. Still several weeks into it. Got to tell you what I heard, what I thought. That's coming up in about 3.5 minutes. You want to weigh in, 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. So, update on Dronegate. Tell you what I heard this morning and my opinion on that. Westside Jeff with you. I'll tell you that in about 3 minutes. But first, I was out and about in my day job today, and I was talking to a couple folks, and somebody said something to me about the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO. And we were talking about it, and he had a perspective, and he shared a little tidbit. And I went, is that fake news? He said, no, go look it up. So I went back. I did a lot of research. I spent an hour and a half, 90 minutes on it and started looking at it. And I was surprised at what I saw. And what I saw was this, and I'm not validating the event at all. Don't read into that at all. There's no but, there's nothing. Not validating it, period. Saw a story. I wanted to go back and look at last week in particular when I was on during this show for Chris. We were talking. I think it was Thursday or Friday night. Took several calls from listeners about the United Healthcare shooting and about healthcare, because it's a bigger issue than the shooting of a CEO. It really is a national conversation about the role that health insurance plays in our lives, employer-based programs as well as government-based programs. I was surprised to learn, and this comes from, I found several sources. One was from the Boston Globe, that they did a deep dive on healthcare and claims. And as the story goes, United Healthcare dismissed about 1 in every 3 claims in 2023. It's the most of any major insurer, and it's twice the industry average of 16%. That's according to data from the Value Penguin. It's a consumer research site owned by LendingTree that specializes in insurance. The group's analysis is based on in-network claims, not out-of-network, so it's in-network claims, data from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I thought that was interesting because, again, it pronounces and it really makes the argument about health insurance even more significant. As I look at the chart, the industry average of claims to be dismissed by health insurers, the average is 16%. And that's, again, the source in that is Value Penguin, a consumer research site owned by LendingTree. So 16% is the average. United Healthcare in 2023 was 32%. It was double. The next closest was Medica, and that's 27%. Anthem, 23%. CareSource, 20%. Aetna, 20%. Molina, 19%. Cigna, 18%. Blue Cross Blue Shield, 17%. And again, the industry average, 16%. And what that does for me is tell me that health insurance company, United Healthcare, does have an issue. They need to evaluate it. And in the end, maybe, I hate to say this, but maybe their health insurance rates are too low. And maybe what they need to do is increase them a little bit to counterbalance the payouts, and they need to make more payout claims. That makes sense. United Healthcare, this is a note from Value Penguin. It says United Healthcare has always been close to the top for denial rates. And that was according to an insurance expert at Value Penguin. Said you see a lot of these anguished messages from patients all over social media, specifically calling out United Healthcare. So it's going to be interesting to follow that story and see where that goes. Now, the reasons for denying an insurance claim are often complicated and cryptic. There's a lot of reasons why that happens. But in a lot of cases, doctors can recommend treatment for patients, but the insurer can determine that the treatment falls outside its coverage area and refuse to pay. So that's an interesting story to me. Another person I talked to reiterate this case, and it wasn't a United Healthcare case, but to tell you how stupid sometimes insurance companies can be, and I'm not going to name the organization or the person I heard it from because they've not given me the authority to do it, but it's a very, very large organization that you would know if I told you. And a guy told me this story. He said they have a lot of people insured because it's a big organization. And he said there's a woman in that organization he's aware of because this guy is involved in upper management. He said there's a woman that came down with breast cancer and insurance covered for mastectomy. So she had a mastectomy because of breast cancer. After the process and after her healing, she went back and wanted to have a reconstructive breast surgery to reconstruct for her. And that was turned down because the insurance company, it was not United Healthcare, deemed that was a cosmetic surgery, not a necessity. But the same exact insurance company, and this just frosts my you-know-whats, my pineapples, the same exact insurance company authorized and paid for a gender change surgery on a woman who wanted to be who wanted a trans. I got to tell you, I don't understand. I'm not in that field. I'm not in that industry. But my common sense opinion is simple. When a woman has breast cancer, certainly I think you got to cover that, obviously, right? And to deem that a reconstructive surgery, breast reconstruction, it is a cosmetic surgery, yet a sex change operation is not, is nuts. And I asked this person about it, and he said part of the problem with that, and the reason they got to cover that, and again, I'm not in that industry, so I didn't dig that deep to find it out, but he said he and his team locally, regionally, and even the national people all agreed, but they said that it was mandated as part of the Affordable Care Act in Obamacare. So that was government muck. And it just felt wrong. It just doesn't smell right. It just doesn't look right. It just doesn't feel right. Certainly health insurance is an issue we got to address in the country. And I think the United Healthcare scenario will continue to drive that conversation, and that's not going to go anywhere. You'll see that story continue. The name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and for Chris Crock. If you like to comment, 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. You can also hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff. I want to get into the drone story, and I don't have enough time to do it right now because I get hit bottom of the hour news. Lori Waffenschmidt's in the newsroom waiting to do the news, an update bottom of the hour. On the other side of that, I'll get back to the drone story and the latest in the last really 12 hours on that story and its impact. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I'm in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. I appreciate the tweet from Norma. Thank you, Norma, for sending me an X tweet. Said, hey, Jeff, I just turned you off. I'm tired of the health insurance crap. And I'm sorry about that, Norma. The reality is it is a top story across this country still, and it is worthy of me offering my opinion. And my opinion is it's a big-time issue. It's an issue that there isn't anybody I know that I've talked to that is a customer or involved in health insurance that tells me they love it. Not one. Everybody says it's screwed up. And I think it's a great national conversation and a conversation worth having. And it's something that I think this kind of event and this kind of conversation can be healthy in the long run. That's my attitude. And when I see an organization say they will cover surgery for a woman who has breast cancer, cover the mastectomy, that's good. But when they say they won't cover a breast reconstructive surgery because it's deemed cosmetic, that's bad. That just doesn't make sense to me. And the same insurer said, yes, we will cover a sex change operation. Doesn't make any sense to me. Don't get it. Don't like it. Can't can't agree with it, can't endorse it. It's wrong. That's my attitude. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock. You got an opinion, I'd love to hear it. Like Kyle from Terrell at 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-WBAP. Kyle, thanks for calling. What's your opinion?
Well, it's a corrupt system, and I use the word corrupt because it's on purposely, denying the claims. Some years ago, I had a claim in a city about an hour north of Dallas, where I was managing a golf course community, and I had some kind of procedure done. Don't remember what it was, but the insurance company denied it. So I talked to the manager of the hospital because it's my hometown, and I knew the folks. And they said, no, take all the time you want and fight it. And over a 2-year period, I kept fighting it. And finally, I was talking to the guy that I had gotten to know, and talking about his business. And his business was, he says, I have one of these companies that deny insurance claims. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, that's the purpose of it. The purpose of the business is to find reasons or make up reasons to deny a claim. And I told him my deal. I've been fighting this, one claim for 2 years. He said, no, I'll take care of that for you. That's one of the claims, the companies that we work for. And by the end of the week, I got a letter from the insurance company saying the claim had finally been approved. And but the company's purpose was to deny the claims because most people don't fight it. I'm as a city manager buying insurance for groups for as many years as I had been. I always fight it. I know that at one other point too, there was one of the major insurance companies. Their policy was to deny the claim the first 2 times someone makes it. When you put the claim in, automatically deny it. When they appeal it, then deny it the second time, and the third time look at it and see if it's legitimate. And that's one of the big ones. So they make their money through denials. Now, I happen to agree with you completely about the breast reconstruction surgery. That's wrong not to do that, because that is part of the problem. When you have the mastectomy.
Absolutely.
So you're right in saying that's a. Well, if the Obama administration, was trying to protect women like they would say, the lies they were telling, then they would have made sure that women's breast cancer would cover the reconstruction surgery. But,
absolutely. Kyle, thank you for listening and thank you for calling. I appreciate your input on that. Thanks for being a part of the show tonight, Kyle. I appreciate it. Name is Jeff, Westside Jeff. I want to give an update on what's going on with Dronegate. I call it Dronegate. There have been talks and hearings up on the Hill with folks in charge, and they are still those involved in government are still denying they know anything about it. They're still saying there's no threat, and they still can't verify it. Woke up this morning. One of the things I do in the morning is turn on the news, go up and down the dial, and turned on this morning. It was Today's Show, and Savannah Guthrie was interviewing John Kirby, White House Pentagon spokesman, and of course Kirby, as he said before, he said we've done the detection, then the analysis, we've corroborated the sightings, and in every case that we have examined to date, we've seen nothing that indicates any public safety risk. And if you read those words, if you listen to what he says, when somebody says just enough that leads you to believe there's nothing to it, but when you read the words, there's just enough openness there that it covers his butt afterwards if something does come out. He's not saying there's absolutely no threat. He's saying we have done our, we've done our analysis that gives them the ability to say, oh, we have new information. We've corroborated the sightings. In other words, we've all talked about the sightings. And in every case that we have examined to date, notice the word to date, we have seen nothing that indicates a public safety risk. That's a pretty generic statement that somebody could always easily walk back a couple days down the road. It just stuns me to date that we still don't know anything more than we did a couple weeks ago about the drones. And it just goes to reinforce in the minds of you and I, the voter, the average guy, lunch bucket Johnny, that those in power are not responsive to our needs. We have a government of the people and by the people. And in this case, it's not. And I want to get into that in about 10 minutes about government of the people and by the people, because if I didn't know better, I would have thought just by watching the news, you'd think Donald Trump was currently the president. I'll tell you more about that in about 10 minutes. We're talking about a bunch of stories. We're talking about the shooting in Wisconsin. I'm talking about the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO and talking about Dronegate. I think we'll find out at some point in time there's something about Dronegate that government knew, and it may be something government related. Maybe it's a Space Force, but it's not just nothing. That's my opinion. It's Westside Jeff and for Chris Crock. Let's go to Susan from Arlington. Susan, thanks for listening. You calling in talking about the story I mentioned a moment ago about the health care.
Yes. I've had breast cancer, and that was one of the issues that came up for me. But this was back in 2013, so I don't know when that happened for this person, but I was able to get my breast reconstruction, and they paid for it.
Who was your insurer, if I can ask?
It's called GEHA, which is Government Employee Health Assurance.
Got it. And did you have to fight with it, or was it automatic?
No.
Good for you.
No, my doctor recommended it because they found out that women do better after they have the reconstruction.
Absolutely, they do. You talk about mental health in this country. It's a mental health issue, right?
Right. I mean, it's in this, I don't need my breast to breathe or think or other things, but yet, your clothes don't fit right. You don't feel right as a woman without your breast. It's just different. And
it provides you a sense of person.
Right. And, when you've had your breast removed, it is very shocking. And unfortunately, back in the olden days, because I made the horrible mistake of going on the line and looking at these horrible pictures of women who they literally took out so much of like their chest was caved in because they had to in order to get rid of all the the cancer.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're okay now. Thank you for sharing the story, Susan. I appreciate you being part of the show, and thank you for your comments on that. It just, again, it's Jeff, Westside Jeff, and it to me is just... I just provide common sense opinion. To me, it's common sense. If a woman has breast cancer and they're going to do a mastectomy, that insurance should cover the reconstructive. And for an insurer to say, we're not going to cover that, but we're going to cover a sex change operation, just doesn't make sense to me. It's wrong. It's not correct. It's not right. We've gone awry, and it needs to... It's just wrong, and it's all bad. That's my opinion. Name is Jeff, Westside Jeff, in for Chris Crock. Got to hit a quick one on the other side of this. I want to talk a little bit about who the real president is. Joe Biden is getting lost in Trump's shadow, and that can be dangerous. I'll tell you about that in about 3.5 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and FM at 93.3 WBAP. Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock tonight. I just give you a common sense opinion on current events. That's all I do. Common sense is missing today. I give it to you. And that's all you get from me. Pretty simple, common sense. We're talking about the story out of Wisconsin. We're talking about the United Healthcare story. And we're also talking about drones. I want to talk about Joe Biden's getting lost in the shuffle from a media perspective, and I find that real interesting. I'll tell you about that in about 2 minutes. First, I want to get to Jim in Fort Worth. Jim, thanks for calling. You're on the Chris Crock Show talking to Westside Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. What's your thought on things tonight?
Well, my thought on things actually deals with drones. Saturday night, I was out on my nightly walk. Generally, never look up in the sky, just generally face forward. Happened to look in the southwest direction and saw 7 lights moving laterally across the sky. No sound. Only thing that would be in that direction is the Joint Naval Air Force Base that's down over in Lake Worth. Wasn't following any sort of flight patterns that would be for DFW or Alliance Airport. Happened to mention it to a couple of friends who lived in other parts of the Metroplex over in Dallas and Collin County. They saw the exact same thing. So I don't know what it was, but certainly wasn't, if you will, commercial aircraft. And there's been stories actually recently within the Dallas Observer discussing these types of observations taking place near and around DFW Airport.
Interesting. Did you get video of it?
Yes, sir. I sure did.
Send it to me. I'd like to see that.
You got it.
Give me you want to hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff? Send it that way.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
I'd like to see it.
I can email it to you.
Yeah,
or send it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to see it, and then might use that. So thank you, Jim, for calling, and thank you for that. Appreciate
You're very welcome.
Call.
Hope you have a nice night.
Hey, you too, man. I want to talk about Biden getting lost and Trump showdown. Whether you like Trump or not, and most of our listeners love him, to see what we are witnessing right now is really, truly remarkable with no precedent. He essentially is functioning as a sitting president. Now, in my lifetime, previous years, in the past, when a person was elected to the office of the president, he sat at home in his house or wherever he lived and met with potential cabinet members and was very nice about meeting with them and carefully kept out of the news. Every president's ever done that. Every incoming president's kind of stayed off to the side while the current president finishes his term. Except to make a statement announcing new nominees. Now, the incumbent was president until Inauguration Day. It's always been like that. But that's the way it was in 2016 when Barack Obama was still seen as president after Trump was elected, and all that has since changed. We're seeing history. It's pretty interesting to watch what's going on. Trump is the focus of all eyes. He goes to Europe for the opening of Notre Dame. The protocols that they put in place for his arrival were for those of a sitting president, not an incoming president. They treated him like a sitting president. He holds formal meetings with Zelensky and Macron down at his place in Mar-a-Lago. He's chatting on the couch with Prince William. Why not the prime minister? Well, British know that Trump is enchanted by royalty, but you know what? He doesn't want to be with some grubby labor kind of people from Britain. He talks of new tariffs on Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau jumps on a plane, flies down, has dinner with him 2 weeks ago. After the meeting, Trump refers to him as on Truth Social as the governor of the greatest of the great state of Canada. The government of Syria suddenly falls, and the world turns to America for its stand. Naturally, it comes quickly from Donald Trump. This is not our fight. Don't get involved, is what he put up. The next day, Joe Biden characterizes the moment as one of the risky uncertainty areas for the region. Was there ever a moment that was one of risk of uncertainty for that region? Trump tells Putin that now that he's abandoned Syria, he should make a deal to end the Ukraine war. He said, I know Vladimir well. This is his time to act. China can help, but the world is waiting. You know, if you didn't know better, you'd see Trump is the president of the United States. He's overshadowing Joe Biden. Just yesterday, how refreshing was it to see Donald Trump come out and do a press conference that was 70 minutes, freewheeling, unscripted, with the media, face-to-face, not dodging and hiding, not having KJP or some press person answer the questions. It was him. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was the president of the United States today. And the Democrats got to be hating that. And the Republicans, it depends on who you talk to, but it can be very dangerous because we're 30 days or so away from an inauguration, and I think it could potentially put us into a vulnerable state. It's a weird, uncomfortable time. Because if you didn't know better, you'd think Trump was the president. And that is just, I've never seen it before. And it's hard to put in words and exactly how we move forward with that. Trump comes out yesterday and says to Biden, I've asked Biden not to sell off those border wall parts because I'm going to put them up. You just, if you didn't know better, you'd think Trump was the president. And it's just an interesting time. Got to hit the top of the hour news. Had a conversation on the other side of the news. I want to talk about this. Had a conversation yesterday in my office with a coworker, and we were talking about buying Christmas gifts. And he was talking about buying. He's got 3 kids. He was talking about what he's getting his kids, and it moved into a conversation of: are you spending the same amount? Are you particular about spending the same amount of money or similar amount of money on each of your 3 kids, or do you spend more on the child that you like more? Now, you love all your kids, but there's some you might like better than others. I ask you, do you spend more on the kid that you like? I'll explain that on the other side of the news. Lori Waffenschmidt up in 3 minutes on the other side of that. We'll continue the conversation about Christmas gifts and buying for your kids and grandkids, your family members. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP.